We are in probably one of the most seismic, shifts that has been witnessed by humanity. And I think, all assumptions that we've had about how, lives are going to be lived, work is going to be done, are going to be fundamentally different.
Founder and CEO of More Insights and Strategy, Patrick Moorhead.
6, 5.
CEO of the Futurum Group,
Daniel Newman.
6, 5.
You know a lot about what's going on, Moorhead?
I think we do.
No matter how many times I hear that, Pat, I can't get over the whole "I think we do" comment. It's like, we do. It's
I know. We're going to have to talk to our producers about that and get that dubbed. AI can do everything these days, Dan.
Yeah, what I want is a CEO, legendary CEO, founder, maybe someone that's got 11 or 12 zeros after their name to say something like, "Hey, Pat and Dan, you guys are killing it."
You guys are killing it.
I would love to get something like that on the record. We should work towards that. But we are back for episode 262, and it's been a heck of a week, Pat. We've been on the road, but we are back home. We're settling in. Actually, you're not home. I can see that right now. If that's your home, you've made a big change. What's going on? Where are you today?
Yeah, so typically I'm in an undisclosed bunker, but I can tell you that I'm visiting my dad. He's almost 90 years old. And, you gotta see the parents, right? Got to check in, see how they're doing. Right after this podcast, him and I are going to Anytime Fitness. We're going to hit the weight room. This is kind of the guy he did, until he broke his hip. He was number 2 in the world in rowing in his age group. So it's just great to be here. I love the pod. There's only few instances that I won't do this, but here we are.
I'm glad you're here. I'm glad that we got a big show. We got one of those shows where we're gonna have an on the record, off the record, on the record type conversation. I'm very excited about our guests. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Of course, as you know, we've got our 6-5 Summit coming up. We couldn't be more excited about that. We hope all of you out there have registered. We've got some great speakers. We've confirmed our opening keynote speaker, which is going to be none other than Michael Dell. We've got the list goes on. We will share and continue to share so many more. I think there's like 8-10 of the world's biggest company CEOs, and we got presidents. Maybe one will even come on our show today. They're going to be part of this. Very, very exciting stuff, Pat. And of course, we had a huge week. I mean, this week we could have been anywhere and everywhere. We only got physically to one place. We had our teams deployed all over the world. It was a busy media week. It was a busy coverage week, launch week, content week. And then, of course, the whole Friday gets screwed up when our president decides to, turn the tariff war back on. I don't know, but like you and me, it's like, I guess we're back to the escalation era, but we will get on with that. We're going to get into the Decode now. Pat, you ready to get after it?
Let's do this, buddy.
All right, Pat, we could have been anywhere this week, but where were we? We were sitting at the news desk, being the analyst guys for Dell Tech World. We did 16 interviews for the 6-5. It was a busy, busy week. But there was so much going on, man. Between Dell, Computex, SAP, Google I/O, Microsoft Build. And we won't be able to hit all these things, but what we should do is probably hit the one that we were at this week. So, Pat, why don't you give the take on Dell Tech World?
Yeah, it was a great place to start. And, one of the things I really enjoy about going to Dell Tech World is meeting with the senior executives. I mean, my team, do more of the details that they do, but I like to stick to getting, the essence of the leadership team. And, we both talked to Michael Dell, Jeff Clark, Arthur Lewis, Doug Schmidt, Sam Bird, to get a good idea from a leadership point of view of what's going on. So I want to focus on the important stuff. And that's that the gym opened up at 5 a.m.
Anyone there?
Yeah, Michael Dell was there every day.
Nice.
Some folks from leadership from IR, from Alienware, and probably people that I just didn't know. But I'm glad we knocked that out. And, I do love products, but I think something superseded at the show for me, and that was the very straightforward, eloquent, and understandable way that Jeff Clark talked about customer zero, and how for AI and how Dell accomplished it and what the payback was. The 5 use cases: support assistant, content creation, search, design and data creation, and code generation. He went down the list, talked about how they did it, and the punchline was 3 to 6 months. And also, kind of reading between the lines, Daniel, was that it may not have taken as much GPU power to do all of these things on prem as people might think. You don't need a Grace Blackwell to do these first use cases. Now, they're not doing turn by turn reasoning, and they're not doing agents, but this first step of getting stuff done seemed pretty amazing. It was impressive. Listen, you and I will do 50 events a year, and we're always grading kind of how it is. And this to me was the most straightforward and understandable about the 5 use cases. What did you think?
Yeah, I first of all, and you'll hear this out when you guys tune into all 15 or 16 of our interview videos, and you'll hear our Michael Dell Summit video. You'll see that a lot of my focus this year has been about kind of making all this stuff real. And I appreciate companies right now that are spending a little bit more time on that. There were some profound statements throughout the week that kind of talked about what can be done with less compute that's AI related. Not just at Dell. We've heard it across the board. We've heard it in a number of different places. Wouldn't be surprised to hear it again today. And it's that enterprises want to do AI, and then it's about how do we make this stuff real. Of course, we're going to see these massive 747s full of racks that are going to go to Humane and are going to go to all the mega cap data centers. But we're also going to hear about the rest of the companies. I think Dell is really focused on kind of how do companies across every industry put AI to work and get value. And so that was a big focus here, was kind of giving and articulating hey, here's a use case that we're putting to work. Here's how we're gaining 20% efficiency in the business. Here's how we're optimizing code. Here's how we're bringing all the relevant data to compute so that it can be utilized to help companies get more productive. And that was a really thematic this week, Pat, across the interviews we did, across the keynotes that we heard. And I really think that's what the market needs. Because otherwise, right now, there's only 2 money makers. There's the infrastructure people and the consulting people.
That's right. So the highlights for me on the product side, listen, I love products, but to me, the Dell data platform finally came to life for me. And for years, Dell was calling storage data, and I get it. You store data on you store data on a storage device, but it's not activating the data. And their platform is a combination of all their storage stuff, Project Lightning, and the data lakehouse. And then they have a bunch of partners, people like Cloudera to help activate it, partners like Glean now to help that happen on premises. Strategically, Dell is very differentiated that they comprehend client to cloud and everything in between. And while for years, I really didn't understand the value in that. But deploying models, if you're an enterprise, you're going to build models and you're going to choose where to deploy those models. I think there is value in that combination. Dan, what do you think? Is there value there?
Yeah, of course there is. And I think, like I said, for me on the product side, the edge/smaller enterprise servers, big. I think workstations that are powered for AI, a lot of that kind of AI work starts on a workstation or even on a powerful laptop. And so I think, making sure we understand how this kind of cloud to edge stuff all comes together and works. There was a ton, Pat. There was no way to digest this all and cover this here in just a few minutes, but it was a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I would like to just some stuff that I want to see from Dell in the future, if you don't mind, Daniel. Now that they're moving up to the stack, to the data layer and automation tools and private cloud, they're going to start getting compared with the public cloud folks. And that, by the way, that's a positive. But What the public cloud folks have is simplicity, right? That they have, they have one platform that does models, tuning, data, and agents, right? Google has Vertex, AWS has Bedrock and SageMaker, IBM has Watson X, and Microsoft has Azure AI. And what Dell needs to show in the future is how their virtual platform pulls that all together with partners. The final comment is interesting commentary, which is, hey, a lot of this stuff, IT is not the target. It's senior leadership. I'll be interested to see if their messaging changes and their marketing changes based on CXOs, where, quite frankly, my company is probably more impactful at that layer than the folks setting up servers.
Yeah, I mean, I think selling to the CIO companies that's their sort of number one target are going to have to make a pretty meaningful pivot in the AI era, because I think this is not a technology conversation; it's a business conversation. And we've said that a lot for a long time about different things, but we saw how that sort of stacked up in enterprise software, where the real decision were made. It wasn't made by IT, and then we're going to see this here because agentic AI is kind of the next era of enterprise software in many ways. So I do see that evolving. We got a ton to cover. We could probably have done an entire show, but nice thing is we have 16 videos out there for people that want to hear all about what Dell's up to. We'll make sure that's in the show notes so everybody can follow that stuff, Pat. As we traveled in on a Sunday, because you know how much you and I like to work Sundays so that we can also work on Saturdays. Um, we actually, I'm pretty sure I had to go to my room because I did a little broadcast this week as well, but to cover off on Computex. And so Computex went on. We had Ryan Strout from our team there on the ground. That was a trip I wasn't sad to not make, but it's always a big event. And, the hallmark or the sort of big tent moment it has over the last couple of years has been the Jensen Huang keynote. And so, to me, Pat, just as kind of note, there were a lot of announcements, but thematically speaking, there was really two things that I saw from the NVIDIA side that were really interesting. One was, the advancements of Groot, which is, Groot and Groot Dream, which is basically now building out the synthetic data and kind of giving the technology to power the development of humanoid robots, which we all know, because billions, by the way, are no longer interesting. Billions are small. Trillions is the new thing we have to talk about. And this is a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity in humanoid robots. And of course, if you are an NVIDIA investor and you've been a little bored of, only the next series of Blackwells and only growing maybe 30 or 40% now instead of 400%, we need a new multi-trillion-dollar revenue stream. This is going to be it. Lots of controversy on how quickly and how effectively this happens. With Dream, now they're going to build a synthetic data because there's no way we can train at scale the real world quickly enough with only existing data that we're pulling in real time. I know we need more data, we need it faster. It has to be created synthetically. So there's that. And the one other quick thing I'll say from NVIDIA, because I want to hear kind of what your take was, is the Fusion, NVLink and Fusion was the big thing. Kind of, it's not, some people are like they opened the walled garden, and it's like, no, they didn't quite open the walled garden. They're still very focused on sort of very NVIDIA centric, but what they did do is they sort of gently put a peephole in the walled garden where you could potentially use an accelerator or a different CPU architecture with NVIDIA at one end or the other and continue to build your NVIDIA world. And as Jensen said so prophetically, while we would love you to buy everything, we'd be happy if you bought something. And so I think he basically said, we don't want to become the fully closed walled Apple garden. We want to make sure there's some way. This is like the RCS moment on a Samsung where we'll let you see whether a message has been read. You can kind of do a little bit. So those are the two big things for me, was the NVLink Fusion and, of course, the advancements in robotics.
Yeah, so this has everything to do. I mean, let me jump right into NVLink Fusion. My example was Apple and their APIs, right? Apple does all this amazing stuff on iPhone for 2 years. They say they're getting it right, and then they open it up to developers. If you sign up for NVLink, you will be guaranteed to be behind a couple years. We can check on that in 2 years. But listen, I saw this with Microchannel, I saw this with EISA, and how all these other standards worked out. This is not NVIDIA being nice. This is likely getting the regulatory bodies off their back. It does raise a lot of questions about UA Link, that was going to be the industry standard version of NVLink. The companies like AMD, I mean, there were 10 companies involved. Broadcom had pulled out at the last minute, probably knowing what NVIDIA was up to. And Broadcom's going to be extending Ethernet here. A lot of other. You mind if I bounce to Qualcomm?
No, let's hit them all.
Yeah. So highlights for Qualcomm, not as big as last year when they announced it, but they supported and adopting this NVLink Fusion. And Cristiano, the first time we've heard him say very clearly what they're doing in the data center. He said, quote unquote, Qualcomm has entered the data center, end quote. Not many details beyond that, but it was good to hear him say it. I know when Akash said it last week, it's not like we didn't believe him, but hearing Cristiano talk about it, I think was important. Final thing, Lenovo brought out the first Snapdragon-powered desktop PC. Cristiano hinted at this last year, and here it is, available in many countries around the world.
Yeah, and then Pat, there were others. I mean, we got advancements from AMD, we got advancements from Intel, at least on their AI and workstations. There's so much to cover off on.
My only commentary on AMD is check out the ROCm stack, right? So first of all, they scaled it. It was a data center entity. They scaled it to the PC, which is important, particularly when you're a company and you have to support both. That also brings in a lot more developers into the ROCm stack. And then ROCm, they're bringing out a new drop every 2 weeks, and it went from like once a year to once every 6 months to once every 3 months to a month to now even every 2 weeks. And software compared to NVIDIA has been a challenge for AMD. Big improvements, but NVIDIA is making improvements and extensions even faster than AMD.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And by the way, quietly, I think it was pretty quiet. It didn't really come out, but did you see Elon Musk said that he's going to be using NVIDIA and AMD chips in his next massive cluster build outs? I think it's a pretty big win for AMD, where they've definitely had some people questioning, as it even me, as it went away from sort of announcing its instinct numbers and such. But like, I mean, a win like that, the wins with in the Middle East, AMD's cooking. Lisa's cooking.
Yeah, I still see financial analysts talking about maybe 3% market share. Compared to NVIDIA. I'd like to see if you've done any work along those lines in your forecasts that I think would be updated for what's going on, the deals they're cutting with the KSA and Qatar.
Yeah, we will do the next update on that, I think summertime. So as soon as we have that, we'll run it back for you. All right, we've got two more big ones to hit, and try to keep this show under 4 hours today. Pat, let's give me the break. Give me the break down the build for me, Microsoft build.
Yeah, so the way that I will couch this, I mean, they made just a colossal amount of announcements across AI, intelligent agents, edge computing, cloud. This is the developer show, okay? And yeah, we don't have time to go through all of them, but it's what you would expect, right? Multi-agent Copilot Studio, tuning Copilot for enterprises, adding Foundry capabilities, things like that. But what I want to focus on is something that just dawned on me as I was going through holistically, and that's Microsoft has the possibility. Nobody owns the end-to-end development cycle, but if I look at the holistic, all the way going from edge to cloud and everything in between. Right now, they're the front runner for comprehensiveness and really changing kind of what is built inside of an enterprise and how it is how it is implemented inside of an enterprise. And Google did some great stuff that we're going to be talking to, but which brand is more affiliated with enterprises? Is it Google or is it Microsoft?
What do you think?
I mean, I think it's Microsoft. Google's very strong. They own the Android ecosystem, which is the market share for smartphones. They're doing great stuff in Google Cloud, but right now, Microsoft, that's basically their business, right? They are the enterprise company, business company. That's one of the reasons they have challenges in the consumer space. It's just their mind, their mindset, and the fact that they have turned the company upside down. I got the chance to chat with Jay Parikh, who was on stage with Satya last week, and had a really good conversation with him about acceleration and speed and his development approach. Not enough time to cover that here, but it was fascinating. And he is already a very powerful person at Microsoft, but I can see him, if he executes and delivers, being potentially a Satya's right hand person.
Yeah, it was huge. I mean, the theme for me was agentic web. That was the theme. I mean, there was a lot of sort of parts and pieces in these events. When we talk about I/O, it's the same thing. It's like announcement, 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 announcement. Everybody should be super pumped, but in the end, it's like this kind of idea of an open agentic web. That's what it's all about. The ability for it to augment us. That's what we talk a lot about. Now, again, augment, displace, replace. There's a lot of different words that could be used. I think there was some quote in a stat that went out, something like Microsoft, about 30% of their code is now being done by AI. Where do you think that's heading? I mean, it's not heading lower. It will go higher. They've announced a ton of tools across, GitHub and Azure. And then, of course, kind of user sort of assist tools that live inside Windows and Microsoft 365. So those are substantial. But in the end, it's really going to be all about, how do we accelerate code and development? How do we do more of it with AI? And again, there are going to be a lot of questions about sort of what does that mean for software engineering and software engineers in the future. It's not zero sum, but it will change. It's going to change materially, and these companies are going to be on top of that. So, the other thing that I think Microsoft did a good job was sort of leaning into taking AI and security, because we know the security is going to be super important to this. This is also going to make the bad guys smarter. It's going to make the bad guys more capable, and they're going to be able to do the bad guy things faster. And so Microsoft, technically speaking, I believe, is the world's largest security company by numbers. They don't often get credit for that because it kind of sits inside of a very, very large business. But, I think having tools to make sure that they can, secure agents is going to be really important, because eventually these things are operating, autonomously. They're making decisions and doing things and taking action without supervision. That seems like it's going to need some serious work. And I mean, should we be afraid? Probably a little bit, until we actually figure out how to get this stuff right. So, AI's got to be very human in the loop oriented to begin with. But over time, it needs to be more autonomous to really deliver on the 20 or 30 or 40 trillion of market value that we expect it to deliver, and the exponential amount of efficiencies that we see it gaining. So Microsoft hit on that a lot. The themes were really, like I said, it's this open agentic web. And, let's bounce over to I/O, though, now, talk a little bit about Google, Pat, because, it's funny. I've been on a bit of a rampage about Google over the last several months. People kind of keep saying OpenAI is taking it out. ChatGPT is taking market share. Sam Altman now is not only going to take out Apple, he's going to take out TSMC. He's going to take out NVIDIA. He's going to take out Twitter and X.
Shoot high.
What?
Shoot high.
I mean, but and he's going to take out Google, right? He's going to take out search. He's going to take out social. He was going to build the world's foundry network and then develop all the AI chips. And now he's going to replace iPhones. And I'm being a little tongue in cheek with this, but that's why I'm just not a huge believer in this Jony Ive deal. It's like I think he's just doing too much. I think he should do one thing right, and I think there's a bit of a trust vacuum with that guy. Like his stuff is cool. I mean, it works really well. But Google, on the other hand, it's like everyone keeps saying like they've missed it. They missed it. Their search is going to get crushed. The search is starting to flatten out. But like I don't know about you, but when I use Google search, and I still do, and I use OpenAI, and I use Perplexity, I'm a multi-tool user. But when I use Google, I'm seeing generative AI in every search now. I'm seeing it in every interaction that I have with Google. So I also, by the way, we are a Google Workspace company. So we use Google, it's a friendly technology stack for smaller businesses. And by the way, I see AI in all of my work streams and I see generative AI. So like the idea that generative AI and search and all this, it's like, I just don't see it happening. And there's kind of all this conflicted data. But I mean, what I thought was probably best of this week was it was a bit of kind of a beast mode from Sundar and team. I mean, they launched a ton of stuff. Of course, they have this AI mode in search. So you're going to see a lot more chat and generated interfaces. You saw 2.5 got a big upgrade. You have Pro and Flash. There was tools, tons of tools. VO3, which Pat, I haven't used yet, but what it looks like it's very, very cool. You've got image generation with Imagine 4. You've got Gemini Live. You've got. I'm just kind of trying to get the highlights of all the things that I noted. And they got real-time translation in Meet. And this has been something we've heard a lot about, but we can only do it on device. Well, they're doing it in the cloud now. They're doing real-time language translation in meetings in the cloud. So it's like tons of different things being pushed out. They're embedding experiences into their whole portfolio. I just think it's too soon to call Google's demise. Go ahead.
Listen, no, I mean, they had a rocky start. I mean, Bard was garbage.
God. Yeah, what a shit.
Gemini 1.0 was garbage. Based on their ELO scores and, the leaderboards, I mean, they're doing super, super well. Here's the bridge that it's hard for me to cross though, Daniel. I go in, I'm a paid Gemini user. And I go in and just try to do basic searches or research, researching this podcast. And I just get back a bunch of nonsense. I just don't understand. I don't know if they're, it requires a different way to search, a different, I'm not prompting, not holding it correctly. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves, right? 480 trillion monthly tokens, right? Somebody is consuming those. One thing I thought that I do think they have nailed, Daniel, is AI overviews. And for the other 95% of the population who doesn't care or doesn't even understand some of these AI tools, it's right there. And I think that while the quality of the results might not be as good as a Perplexity or an OpenAI at this point, for the 95%, it's probably good enough. And if you look at where they make their money, 60% from ads alone, and that includes YouTube and search and things like that. That's actually where it matters. The question I have, though, is when it comes to enterprise APIs and enterprise workflows, where they're ultimately going to end up versus Microsoft. You got to jump on everybody by leveraging OpenAI, and they made the capex investments. What I'm super excited about, you knew I'd end up here at some point, is seventh generation TPU that is reportedly 10x higher performance than its predecessor. And that's super exciting if we're looking at token factories and Google's ability to make Gen AI pervasive across billions of users. And I'm excited to see, right, all of this token madness, the 400 million active users on Gemini app, the 5x growth in developers, the 480 trillion monthly tokens have all come with the previous generation of silicon.
Whew. And there you have
Still
it.
there? Still
Anything
there,
else?
best?
Anything else? No, I think that's enough.
Nah.
Yeah, there's God. This week was amazing. So much more. And like I said, even the mornings we tried to record this, it was like so much more fodder to talk about. But we can't hit on everything. I love doing the flip with you, Pat, because I like to win arguments, and it's like my favorite thing to do. But I think
Well, especially at the end of the week when I've cleaned your clock,
all
Monday,
week
Tuesday,
long.
I
Yeah.
get that.
Hey, you want to bench press? Because I know one area I can beat you. I'll make you a deal. I'll do it with one arm.
Oh gosh, you're on, man. I'll do it with my right arm, which my shoulder isn't jacked.
No.
But
You can.
the difference is, Daniel, it's percentage improvement, right? Because you can sit there all day long and not have big gains and be happy that you've been working out for 20 years. But what's harder? Coming out from being a fat slob with no muscles
Well,
like
clearly
me?
no one's impressed by me because I walk around with you and it's like following the health journey, Pat. Oh, Pat,
By
I
the
don't
way,
want you.
what I'm hearing in the back of my head is Pat, you were a fat slob before. Now you look pretty good.
Yeah, you look
You know?
less crappy. All right.
Yeah.
Well, here's the deal. I did want to debate with you, and maybe we'll do this some other time. I want to debate with you whether or not Apple can actually move their manufacturing to the U.S., but only because that came up this morning. But I also know how you like to work. You actually like to pre-read, and I just like to make stuff up. So I think we should come back to that debate at an appropriate time. I'm going to go with a skip the flip. That's going to be our quote for weeks when we have a big interview, and I'm very excited about. We're going to skip the flip. So we're going to go off the record now. We've got a special guest here to join us today. None other than Jeetu Patel. He's going off the record. Maybe he had a big update this week. Maybe a couple.
Gentlemen, I can't turn on the computer and not see the two of you somewhere on my feed. So congratulations for all that you folks are doing.
No, I appreciate that. And hopefully the years before that, before we started doing broadcast, we earned our keep. So
You sure did. You've got some great insights, and I depend on it. So
yeah, we're gonna make G2 say we're killing it. We're gonna just have that be the thing.
you're killing it, man. You're killing it.
We're killing it. Oh, so listen, I mean, I have to say back to you, G2, that you are equally as prolific. I've been turning on anytime I go in LinkedIn. I'm pretty sure I saw a picture of your beautiful bald head and the president of the United States.
It was.
So
I had the honor of meeting the president and His Highness, His Royal Highness MBS in Saudi. So it was a great event that they thrown there. So it was fantastic.
yeah. Well, G2, while you were there crushing it and cutting deals, Dan and I were sending memes back and forth to each other, just like navel gazing. Here we are, not cutting deals in there. So we absolutely had some FOMO out there. But congratulations on everything. And G2, what I've really, in the short period that we've known each other, I've really taken an appreciation for your product centricity. I'm a recovering product person, as you know, 20 years doing this, and to watch you dive in and accelerate what's going on at Cisco puts a huge smile on my face. And it's good to see Chuck. He appreciates it. He sees what you've done in your team, but it's been really spectacular.
Yeah, it's been an honor, and actually, a lot of these these jobs, Patrick, as you know, like you get an undue amount of credit, but you have to have the team underneath to go out and execute. And we've got a hungry team that's actually working around the clock, and I'm so fortunate to be part of it. So I feel like Cisco has amazing technology, amazing people. It's not hard to lead a team like this. They're just pretty self-generating on amazing innovations on a constant basis. So
Well, you're now the president and chief product
they
officer.
give these jobs to anyone, Patrick. What can I say, man?
Well, I think that that's humble. I think you're doing all the right things, giving credit to the team. Saying that they'll give these jobs to anyone, but I would say that the tide has turned. I mean, in earnings, they look great. The product roadmap, some of the wins, and we'll hit on some of those. But like in this new role with this new responsibility that's been given to you, what are talk about a few of your key focuses and key shifts that you're driving to make sure that Cisco really gets the lion's share of what it should in this current market with AI.
So Daniel, the way that at least I've thought about this is we are in probably one of the most seismic, shifts that has been witnessed by humanity. And I think all assumptions that we've had about how lives are going to be lived, work is going to be done, are going to be fundamentally different. And it's actually interesting because we normalize to the new normal so fast. I always give this example, like the first time you go sit in a Waymo, it feels like magic. And the second time you start kind of complaining about, the seat's not comfortable. The third time it's completely normal and you're like starting to do email. And it's I think the compression of time for humans to start to get adjusted to these things that are really magical step function leaps are truly amazing. And so what we have to do as Cisco is we are an infrastructure company, we are a security company. We have to make sure that we fuel this movement that's going on with providing our infrastructure on the networking side, on the security side, on the observability side, on the data side of the house. And if we can continue to innovate to make sure that the momentum remains, by build out of data centers, by making sure that you've got low latency connectivity. One of the big areas is how do we make sure that you reduce the amount of idle time for a GPU, and that happens when you actually have high speed network connectivity, and that's where we play. The other big area that's super important in AI is safety and security and trust. And so, keeping AI itself safe and secure is pretty important. And so those tend to be kind of big areas of focus for us. And then what we've done is we've started constructing partnerships because I believe that this market is going to be all about ecosystems and partnerships. So whether it be OpenAI or NVIDIA or G42, these are all kind of amazing companies that we want to make sure that we partner with so that we can provide what we are best at to them so that they can do what they're best at and we can progress the mission for AI.
So G2, one of the hardest things as running products is balance. Whenever I
I
had a
have none of that
plan,
right now, man. There's no
yeah,
balance.
yeah, definitely not talking about work-life balance. Talking about the balance between what you're trying to achieve, let's say that will pay off in 5 years versus something that will give you some short-term revenue. And maybe there's not a difference in that, but how do you approach that right now where there's a ton of investment that needs to be made right now inside of Cisco that might not pay off for a while?
I think the pace is so fast right now that I have to be honest, like a 5 year window, I'm just not smart enough to look out 5 years and know what's going to happen. We are thinking in and the reason for that is because I think scientific progress will have probably compounded 1,000x, 10,000x in that time window. And when you have an exponential curve like the one that we're going through right now, it's very hard to predict long term. But what you have to do is make sure that speed at scale is really, really thought through. So one of the things that we talk about internally is can we operate at the speed of a startup with the scale that we have, and if we can do that right, we'll be in pretty good shape. The thing that we've really focused on is can we build great products that actually get out to the industry fast, that get to adoption fast, that get to commercial relevance fast? And that's the three-part goal: is build great products people love that they can't resist talking to their friends and family about. Make sure that they get adopted, and then make sure that once they've been adopted, that there's commercial relevance. And you're starting to see this now in the way that our financials are starting to look, and the way that we've actually seen our businesses start to grow, and it's because there's this relentless kind of pursuit on excellence around the product. I would say that we are probably about a 24-month window to 36-month window is the outlook that we keep in mind, Patrick. And then beyond that, I think you just have to keep iterating, and you have to be nimble enough to make sure that you can adjust and be responsive to market movements, but don't become reactive to them. I think that's the goal: is can you be responsive without being reactive? Because reactive almost is being panicked, whereas responsive is making sure that you can adjust to those and really use it to your advantage and to the advantage of your customers.
Makes sense. I love the startup mentality, and there was a lot of discussion about, hey, is Cisco slowing down? How relevant are they in the age of AI? And I think the last 6 months of product announcements, to me, have shown that you guys are very much in the AI game. So I appreciate you outlining that.
I'm hoping there's no longer a debate anymore about the fact that Cisco is slow, because I used to hear that all the time. And we have done more in the past 18 months on product innovation than we had done in the decade prior combined. Like there's no shortage of ideas still, and we're just getting warmed up. So I'm hoping people are seeing it now at this point, because just in the last week, uh, Daniel was making fun of me when I sent over a list of all the things we've announced last week, and it's like there's a half a dozen things that we announced last week. Every single day we had a new thing, starting with on Monday, the chief product officer of OpenAI joined our board. And then from there on out, like there was, announcement after announcement, our partnership with His Highness, His Royal Highness MBS at Saudi, and then what we're doing over there with the Humane Group, and then what we did with Abu Dhabi and G42, and it just there's a compounding effect to it.
Well, let's dive into that. I was going to ask you about what the next 20 years of tech look like, but you said you can't decide. So I'm gonna get to something that you can talk about. The great thing, by the way, Jeetu, Pat and I have this commitment to making the longer calls, because no one ever holds you accountable. So yeah, I'll bet 30. I'll make a comment on what I think is going to happen in 30 years, because I'm going to be probably dead. So
I just like spending other companies' monies too.
It's
I recommend to that he gets into a business that's going to cost him $1 billion in R&D. But I always preface that with, this isn't my money, but
here you go. I can spend.
We got to run it like it's our own money, otherwise it doesn't work, right? Yeah,
you do, and it is. I mean, you're a shareholder, and many people are. Good company. So let's talk, because you've kind of alluded to this a few times about these partnerships. Let's dive in, because I know we only have about 10 more minutes of your precious time. Thank you for that. You've done a lot of partnering. Humane was a big one. There's been some big things with NVIDIA, AIP. I mean, there's so many things that you've been up to. Talk about kind of, you mentioned ecosystem being the future. Just kind of break this down a little bit more for us.
So, I mean, at the macro level, what's happening right now is that, there is a huge movement around AI, and that you have to then look at what is AI, what's constraining AI, and what's constraining AI right now: power, compute, fast infrastructure for networking, and then making sure that you've got the right level of AI companies actually taking advantage of that, and data, right? And so if we start looking at, and then of course safety and security become big pieces. So what we've done is we have had a bunch of partnerships right now, strategic investments as well as partnerships around data center build out. And so Humane was the first project. In fact, Tarek, who just got named the CEO of Humane and works for His Highness Abdullah Al Swahab, who's on MBS's staff, one of the kind of thought leaders in AI um, in the kingdom. What's really interesting is if as you move into this world of agentic AI, what are the things that are going to need to be done? And so if you need to make sure that you have massive data center build outs, we partnered with Humane along with other, chip manufacturers, whether it be NVIDIA, whether it be AMD, to ensure that we can provide low latency, high performance, low energy consumption networking infrastructure for Humane. And then we've also partnered with them on the security front, right? And so there's a combination of two. And what I was saying was Tariq had built out the geo infrastructure, and we had helped him build out the geo infrastructure for networking. And then he built out the Rakuten infrastructure. So as a company, we've had a relationship with him for multiple years. And so he's seen this rodeo before. He knows who to bank on and depend on when you have to build out resilient infrastructure at scale. And so we decided to start talking, as he was starting to take this job, and here we are. And so that's the first big partnership that we announced that which is why I was in Saudi for a couple of weeks back to back. And then the other area that's a powerhouse in the Middle Eastern region is Abu Dhabi with UAE. And if you look at what Sheikh Tanoon is doing over there, who's the AI mastermind, and Abu Dhabi has become one of the hubs for AI over there. And so they over there, what we've done is we've done a partnership on multitude of different levels. The AI infrastructure project is something that BlackRock and MGX have actually come together with. We've made a strategic investment over there. We're also partnering with, the Stargate project that was just announced yesterday, the Stargate UAE project with Sam Altman and Jensen and others, Oracle, and SoftBank, and we will be providing the networking infrastructure for both hardware and software, security infrastructure, hardware and software, and then observability. And so that's an area that we'll actually be partnering. So that was the second big area of announcements. We will continue to do more and more kind of infrastructure build outs with countries who are going to be kind of allies of the U.S. And so that's actually been really exciting to see. And I think this is fantastic in the long term for the U.S. because U.S. tech is going to be used in all these different areas, and it's going to be something that will only continue to keep compounding in its importance.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't believe the amount of announcements that you've done over the past 2 weeks. And, this is good for the country. It's good for national security because if they're not going to be buying our technologies, they're going to be buying China's technologies. And I choose our technologies over anything. So I want to lighten this up, end on I don't necessarily call it a fun note. It's related to AI, G2. But what's an AI product or subscription that you cannot live without right now?
I'd say the most used for me right now is OpenAI. On ChatGPT and what they've done. I think Google's done a fantastic job in the past couple of past week as well. I don't know if you've used Veo 3. I mean, it's mind bending.
Did my first video today, and it wouldn't actually let me do it. I wanted Patrick Moorhead riding a motorcycle in the desert, and it said, "Nope, can't do that. Sorry."
That's you're too cool for AI, man. And the other one is, I think we've made strategic investments in, Anthropic. I think Claude's good. The one area that we're investing a lot in right now is, look, we've got 27,000 engineers. I think they should each be able to produce at least an order of magnitude more in the next couple of years than what they do today. And so, we are equipping them with Windsurf. We just actually announced a partnership with OpenAI this week as well on with Codex. So Codex is their kind of agentic tool for software engineers, where you can literally give it a task and it'll fully autonomously go out and fix a bug. It'll go build a small little website for you, whatever you want it to do. It'll actually do it in a fully agentic form. And so we are the first design partner with OpenAI. And so when you start thinking about the amount of stuff that's happening, both internally and externally, it's mind bending. And then last week or 2 weeks ago, we announced our own very first AI reasoning model, which is going to be open sourced for security. And so I announced that at the RSA keynote. And so I believe that the world is going to get to be very, specialized, where you're going to have specialized bespoke models. And so we had an 8 billion parameter model for security that we launched that, believe it or not, is actually performing better than, and as good as a 70 billion parameter model with a very, very small amount of data. So you can run that literally on a single A100. And so when you start thinking about the level of drop of cost of compute that can happen for these specialized models, that's going to have a meaningful impact for organizations, where something in the past that would need like a cluster of 4 nodes and 32 GPUs that were H100s, now you can run for a fraction of that cost. And that's going to keep the world safe, because it's going to be around security and safety. So I feel like, answering your question, my probably the thing that I use the most on a daily basis is ChatGPT. But even something like Midjourney, like every single one of my keynotes has gotten transformed because of what Midjourney can do.
That's exciting. Yeah, I thought you were going to say the OpenAI Johnny Ive pin, but that's not available yet.
that talk about a partnership of titans. I mean, I know Sam well because of all the stuff that we're doing right now with OpenAI, but Johnny is a legend in this industry, and the fact that those two have come together, I think, is going to do some amazing things. And what they're doing is fundamentally reimagining the entirety of the stack of tech, which I think is going to be really exciting to see.
For sure.
I'll just come on the record, since we're off the record, and say I'm a skeptic. I actually don't I don't see that.
You're a skeptic of Johnny Ive.
I'm not a skeptic of what he's done. I admire what he's done. I'm a skeptic of them coming together and outpacing and outclipping and potentially reordering the hardware ecosystem, which is what it would require to get people to move. But that's, sometimes I'm a skeptic, sometimes I'm a believer. I'm a techno optimist. I'd love to see more disruption. Nobody could disrupt the BlackBerry until it happened. Maybe no one can disrupt the iOS until it happens. I'm just saying.
I don't even think it's going to be that zero sum, Daniel. And the way I'd love to see what happens, and we should have this conversation in a year or 2 years from now and see if you're right or wrong. But the reality is there's so much beta, there's so much risk in any of these projects that go on, that by definition, most of these projects tend to have a degree of irrationality to it. But that's what startups are, is they're irrational by nature. But I do feel like when you get two people with aligned values that have an obsession to go out and do something meaningfully discontinuous in the market, like, good things happen from it. On the other hand, I don't think, like, I'm a big fan of Apple, and I think Apple is going to be one of the giants of the industry that we will keep looking up to and admiring for as long as I'm alive, at least in my lifetime. So I do feel like what this does is just becomes additive in nature rather than something getting subtracted as you go forward. But I'll wager a bet that I think these two will actually do something meaningful. And we should come back over here in 12 months and see if you were right or I was right.
Well, let's make a bet to go out to the beach somewhere and look at awesome cars together and maybe race them at some point. Winner take all. But again, the world doesn't go round if there aren't a whole lot of opinions. But we, at least at the 6-5 here, try to root them in research, data, and facts. But we get a lot of our calls right, and we'll remind everybody out there of that when we do. And when we get them wrong, we try to.
Hang on. I want to know what Patrick. Hey, Patrick, what's your take on it? You think it's net positive, net negative?
I think it's net positive because it bridges the gap between the devices you already have. I don't think the smartphone will be able is not the full instantiation of what people are looking for. What I'm looking for though is it truly a pendant or is it something in your ear or your eyes? This is what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, what category of device do you think is needed right now?
Well, right now I think it's in the ear where, it's integrated. You don't need a phone. It'll go with you anywhere. But the issue with that is it needs visual data. But I just think that it will take probably 5 to 10 years for people not to get creeped out by a camera that's on all the time. I know that Meta Ray-Ban has been a good case study, but and we when we've moved, and I'm also realized that 20 years ago, if we had said that we would tell people online exactly where we are when we're there, we would have said no, that's creepy. But it's a boiling frog. So to me, it's just the form factor. I think the form factor will likely be in the ear.
I'll tell you this. I currently carry a PC, I carry an iPad, I carry a phone. And I know some people that also carry a separate kind of, remarkable notebook. So I think these things get to be additive rather than, subtractive, but it'll be interesting to see.
It'll be in the eye. Has to be in the eye. We're too visual. Look, like the flip, Pat, I will be right, but unfortunately, we will be dead before we know. Jeetu Patel, I can't wait to have you at our 6.5 Summit. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Looking forward to it.
I know you probably have a bunch of other appearances, media, press, and new products to launch all today because that's how fast you move. Let's have you back soon. We love chatting to you, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me. See you, folks.
Thank you.
You know what? I want to use that cut in at some point, Pat. I want it to be like a the bear. You know what I mean? Like then a bull.
Yeah, what show? Yeah, there was a show that might have been inspired by, the ding, 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 ding. Kind of sounds like our guy over at CNBC.
Oh, Kramer.
Kramer.
I think
We could do inverse Kramer.
that's whatever they say. Do whatever the opposite is. Do the opposite. So busy week in the markets, Pat. Busy week in sort of the macro economy, and these things are heavily tied together. Where do I start? We're traveling home on Wednesday, and the bond yields are just absolutely ripping in the wrong direction. Pat, we may have another implosion going on with the reverse yen, the reverse carry trade as Japan's bonds are out of control. The auction, nobody's buying these bonds. And by the way, we had a 20-year auction here, and this is a little bit nerdy for our audience. I get it, but like people are not buying our bonds. The bonds ripped after this auction like 5.1% or something on the 30-year. And on the 20-year, there was no buyers for them. And that's because nobody believes we're willing to make the fiscal responsibilities because we're going to get this big, beautiful bill that everybody keeps hearing about. And by the way, Pat, the big, beautiful bill for someone like you is big and beautiful because you're going to get big tax cuts. But for guys like me that barely scrape by and actually have to pay to work at their companies, you could see an actual tax increase. Pretty devastating, not super pleased.
I don't know, Daniel. I'm innovating. I'm getting near you.
You
right?
are. You've made progress in terms of breaking the chains of continued success and cash flow. Good on you. Nobody needs more money than they can spend. Welcome to the party. But also, a pretty big Friday morning as this thing started off. The market took a dump in the morning today after what was pretty steady. And, we were hearing trade deals. We were kind of mostly in this de-escalation phase. China's progressing. But then President Donald Trump came out and basically said the EU sucks. They're not giving us the type of concessions he would expect. These are my words, not his. But his was basically, we need to charge 50% tariffs starting June 1st. So in a week, we're going to go after the EU now because they haven't made enough progress in the trade deal. Pat, I chalked this up. I seriously, I tweeted something along the lines of this. This is the escalate, de-escalate strategy. Use your truth and your X platform to escalate something, create a whole bunch of chaos to make sure the world knows. And then basically they're going to come back because EU needs us, people. Like, let's be very clear. And they're going to de-escalate this, and then it'll cause a little dip and a little rally. I actually call this a nothing burger. The bond stuff scares the crap out of me that nobody wants our bonds. Nobody trusts our fiscal responsibility, that we're adding trillions to the deficit. that Doge has been pretty much sidelined. I mean, that was a thing. Now we're not hearing anything about actually trying to cut any costs. Oh, and by the way, President Trump told Tim Cook he needs to make his iPhones in the U.S. today, or he's going to pay a 25% tariff. Another.
Yeah. Do you mind if I do a victory lap on that one?
No, please. I want to get your take, so go for it.
I mean, I've said twice over the last 6 weeks, just wait until the White House realizes that all of the iPhone sub-assemblies that are final assembled in India are made in China, right? And I guess Apple thought that, the administration was dumb, and somebody competent at the White House figured this out. So, this didn't hamstring China at all. And while I question, how many years it would take to build an iPhone here in the U.S., you have to put together a design that's more manufacturable by robotic manufacturing. This is not about adding jobs. I think this is more along the lines of pulling in all of the sub-assembly vendors into the United States, as opposed to it happening all over China. So, yeah, I will do the victory lap, and our producers need to have whenever we do a victory lap, I think we need to have some sort of an interstitial.
By the way, it was a smart but not smart enough, right? I mean, that's what it was. Is like, because it was really clever, because India and the U.S. are going to have better relationships. In fact, an announcement came out today that within 7 to 10 days, we could have an India framework deal. But just sort of like you said, taking 90% of the work still being done in China, then having a China-India relationship that has probably a low barrier, and then they ship all those things over there, and then basically Apple invests in India to do final assembly in India, and then ships them back to the U.S., where there's probably going to be like a 10% tariff, right? It looks super smart, except the fact is that the dependency on China wasn't really shifted at all. We didn't shift all that stuff. Like, so if I have a feeling that if Tim Cook and Apple was going to shift more of that stuff to India, the Trump administration may not be quite as negative, because I also don't think the Trump administration wants to be in a situation where India has the same asymmetric power over us in 5 or 10 years under a different leadership or a different regime. We're now, instead of China dependent, we're India dependent in such a significant way. I think they're getting smart. What I don't know, Pat, is look, we've seen with Tesla and the gigafactories and what he's done, he can bring U.S. manufacturing with high automation and make high-end technical products here in the USA efficiently and competitively. And I'm not comparing phones and cars exactly, but I'm saying the big investments. And by the way, he built those in a year. He built those things in a year. So sometimes I do think there's a little hyperbole about that. It's impossible and it could never happen.
It is, Daniel. Daniel.
It's impossible, or it's hyperbole?
No, it's hyperbole.
Okay, thank you. I got a little freaked out, because I do trust that you're smart. If you were going to tell me it's impossible, I was going to be crap. I've gone on the record at least 3 places where I'm going to look like an idiot today. But I think it's a little hyperbole. We can do this. And by the way, we need to do this. The one thing it won't do, Pat, is it's not going to create that mountain of jobs. We're going to create highly automated, efficient robotics factories to build the future. And it's great for the U.S. It'll create shovel jobs, because we still need people to build those places. But it's not going to be factories full of people screwing together iPhones. That's not happening. Won't happen. And I think the dream of it is, it's dumber than ethanol. It's a dumber dream than
best case Mexico. They want to keep similar designs, and the reason it's not in Mexico right now is the sub-assembly systems aren't there. There are certainly enough people to do that, but even in Mexico, you need it to be more robotic than it is in India and China.
So we got a couple of earnings to cover real quickly on, Pat. I'll just do the quick headers, and then I got one I want you to dive a little bit more into. Our friends at Palo Alto, the CEO will be joining us for Summit. They had a strong result. Security's hot. They did miss on margins, but they're investing a lot right now. They're buying companies, they're expanding their footprint, building out the platform. That's not surprising, but they beat on earnings and revenue. So honestly, who cares if they have a little bit of cost that they're taking on right now? I know some people care. I don't care. Snowflake also ripped. Pat, this is going to be the debate of the century. Does all that data on-prem need it, or can you basically use mostly the new data that's standing up from you in the near term to build most of your AI, because data that's more than what, a year or two old, how relevant is it in your AI and agentic world? That will be the debate of the future. On premises and cloud companies are going to make this argument. I think we're going to have a lot of fun talking about this over the long run. But Snowflake looked really good. But I want to dive deep on one because next week is NVIDIA week. Also Dell and a few others, but it's NVIDIA week, so it's a national holiday. And what better breadcrumbs than looking at some of the OEMs and what they've got going on, Pat? And Lenovo. I know, like we talk about Dell, we get a lot of, there's a lot of talk about Dell in this because in Supermicro, those two tend to. But Lenovo is another major signal. They did pretty well, huh?
Yeah, they did. And first off, as I was sorting through all the content, it's very hard to tell what happened in the quarter. And this has been a challenge with Lenovo for as long as I've been covering them. When they come out with their annual results, they even the presentation really didn't talk about the quarter. It talked about the year, right? Even though the quarter was pretty good, right? And let me go segment by segment here, but the devices group, which is smartphone plus PC, was up 13%. Even though we didn't do this research, I do believe that their market share in units led. Smartphone, right? They outpaced the market by 12 points. But the biggest news on the second largest businesses side of the company was infrastructure, right? Which was up an eye-popping 64%. Now, a lot of this growth, Lenovo's AI servers, they were a little late to market. They made some decisions on that infrastructure that limited their market upside, but they bridged the gap, and now here we are, 64% growth, which is pretty awesome. Which on a percentage business is up there with the folks like Dell. Now, the dollar volume of it, right? It was around $3.7 billion. Still respectable, but smaller when compared to, let's say, a Dell and an HPE. SSG Group keeps pumping out double-digit gains, 22% gains on revenue of $2.2 billion. And again, they're focused on not only the break fix stuff or stuff related to a device, but also consulting, AI, and software. They have a couple really interesting solution areas that you would expect, which is related to collaboration in a box, a desktop as a service, or device as a service, hybrid cloud services, and a lot of the stuff that was released at the last Tech World that you and I attended out in Seattle. A lot of these AI types of services that were very vertically focused, or should I say, kind of worker profile focused, like legal, as an example, even CRM.
Yeah, I think the ISG numbers where everyone really gets super focused. Some great upside on liquid cooling results. Some great upside on the overall, CSP number. Huge, like almost 100%, like 90 something percent. And then, of course, I also thought it was impressive. They're making some real headway in ESMB. The smaller companies. I think they had like mid double digit, 20% growth there. And Lenovo providing AI and infrastructure to that sort of market segment's interesting because it shows that they're kind of one Lenovo, the services and support. It has to be all tied together because those companies can't stand up infrastructure meaningfully on their own. It means they're tying the threads together. And it probably also is being built off of some of their digital workplace solutions and devices. So it really is tying the whole company together and bringing new revenue streams, which has been a focus overall. But as I said in my post online, a lot of breadcrumbs there for some possible good news next week. We've seen some good results coming out on a lot of the different sides, but I've said along the way the CapEx is stable, AI demand is strong. Nobody's slowing down because of any of this sort of macro nonsense as it comes to mass scale AI deployments. I've heard it in multiple places. You're going to keep hearing this from me. It's not a bubble. except there might be some bubbly things inside of it. But NVIDIA probably will look good, and we'll cover that off in spades next week. Pat, we've gone, we've gone through the gambit. And by the way, we didn't even hit on like probably 5 more things I would have liked to. But again, great conversations. Thanks again to Jeetu Patel, newly minted president and chief product officer at Cisco, for joining us here. The summit is coming, 6.5 Summit. Hope everybody wants to spend some time with us. It's going to be 4 great days of mostly Pat flying around the world doing interviews. Pat, thanks so much for doing all that while I took a nice vacay. Just kidding, everybody. It's not how it works. And yes, the bench press competition is coming. Hit subscribe. Join us here for all our weekly episodes of the 6.5. We appreciate all you so much, but we got to say goodbye for now. See you all later.